Welcome to this immersive journey into one of history's most pivotal moments that nearly changed the trajectory of America forever. Today, we explore the assassination attempt on Franklin Delano Roosevelt in February 1933, a moment that defined courage, fate, and a fragile thread of history. Through rare, vintage photographs and detailed narration, we'll uncover the events leading up to that night in Miami, the figures involved, and the larger implications of what could have been a drastically different world. Our story begins in 1932. The United States was reeling from the Great Depression, with millions unemployed, banks failing, and hope dwindling. The people had turned to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a man whose promises of a New Deal sparked hope for recovery. Roosevelt, the former governor of New York, had just been elected President of the United States and was weeks away from his inauguration. As we set the stage, imagine a sepia-toned photograph of Roosevelt delivering one of his powerful campaign speeches to a crowd of thousands. His charismatic presence and confident smile conveyed hope even during the darkest times. Fast forward to February 15th, 1933. Roosevelt was visiting Miami, Florida, on a warm winter evening. A photograph of the bustling Bayfront Park sets the scene, a place where palm trees swayed gently under the evening sky, and crowds gathered eagerly to catch a glimpse of the president-elect. Among the crowd that night was Giuseppe Zangara, an unemployed bricklayer who had grown increasingly angry at the government and blamed political leaders for his hardships. A close-up mugshot of Zangara captures his stern, frustrated expression, a man consumed by desperation and rage. As Roosevelt addressed the crowd from the back of an open car, Zangara emerged from the throng, pulling out a .32 caliber revolver. A chilling black-and-white photograph depicts the moment, with blurred figures and the shining weapon in Zangara's hand aimed at the president-elect. Zangara fired 5 shots in quick succession. Panic erupted. A vintage illustration of the chaotic crowd shows people screaming, ducking for cover, and pointing toward the source of the gunfire. In this chaos, one bullet struck Chicago Mayor Anton Cermak, who was standing close to Roosevelt. A photograph of Anton Cermak lying on the ground, surrounded by concerned bystanders, tells the story of his tragic fate. Cermak was rushed to the hospital, where he succumbed to his injuries weeks later. Meanwhile, Roosevelt, remarkably composed, instructed his driver to take Cermak to the hospital. Another photograph shows Roosevelt sitting in the back of his car, a calm expression on his face, embodying the resolve and poise that would define his presidency. Zangara was immediately subdued by the crowd. A dramatic vintage photograph captures the mob closing in on him, fists raised in fury. Zangara's trial was swift. He was sentenced to death and executed within weeks, leaving behind a legacy of violence and despair. But what if Zangara's bullet had struck Roosevelt instead? This question lingers heavily as we examine a speculative timeline. A digitally illustrated map of the United States shows the potential ripple effects of Roosevelt's absence. The collapse of the New Deal, a slower recovery from the Great Depression, and a very different trajectory for World War II. We also reflect on Roosevelt's leadership, immortalized in photographs of him signing the Social Security Act, leading the nation during wartime, and delivering his iconic fireside chats. These images remind us of what could have been lost had fate taken a darker turn. As we conclude this journey, we return to that pivotal night in Miami, a moment frozen in time that reminds us of the fragility of history. The assassination that never happened not only preserved the life of a great leader, but also shaped the course of the 20th century. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into one of history's most fascinating what-ifs.